We are loved beyond measure. At some point, you just have to trust her. She loves you more than you will ever know. She wants us to love one another.
Morning, and welcome to another episode of Priestess at the Altar. A few changes on the YouTube channel. The playlist that Priestess of the Altar is under is now called Church of the Goddess, and that is a new playlist because it is a new side project of yours truly. Church of the Goddess is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and I'll talk more about that in other videos for the Church of the Goddess. But for now, that's all you need to know, is that Priestess at the Altar is under the umbrella of Church of the Goddess, and it is under the Church of the Goddess playlist. So with that, welcome to another episode of Priestess at the Altar. So let's begin in our usual fashion. I'm glad that you've come to join me today. So we're going to begin with our usual prayer. I want you first to get centered with me and take 3 deep breaths. We're going to breathe in through the nose, now through the mouth. I'm going to do it with you. So let's get seated, get centered, get quiet. Oh, you'll notice I've expanded the altar. So now we have a fully functional, large altar behind me. So when I come in here and pray and meditate, this is the altar that I face most often. I have another altar in my living room that you may have seen in other social media posts. Anyway, so let's take 3 deep breaths. Let's go in through the nose, now through the mouth. Let's do that again. And one more time. It is our love and our passion, our faith, that brings us here, where we can spend just a little time to commune, to be still, to feel the life force of human connection, which also connects us to her. Just imagine for a moment a silver thread that connects everyone who's watching this video now or who will watch it later today, from different places at different times all over the world. For we have been drawn together in the light and the peace and the love of the goddess. And together, we all say, Amen Dea. Thank you. So today's message comes to us from Iyanla Vanzant and her book, One Day My Soul Just Opened Up. This is it's kind of a workbook. It's 40 days and 40 nights towards spiritual strength and personal growth. I've worked through this book myself. And if you are on a journey of personal growth, or if that's new to you, I highly recommend it. The exercises are sometimes hard, but definitely worth it. And it is certainly a good book to use if you are learning how to discipline yourself into a daily self-care practice and self-care journaling practice, self-care ritual practice, whatever, but just self-discipline of doing anything for 40 days is kind of a miracle if you've never done that before. So that's why I highly recommend this book. It was one of the first ones I ever did that I made a commitment to do something for many days in a row and actually, did it. So I've chosen a couple readings from here, but I'm gonna like read a little and then talk and then read some and then talk. And I have replaced the word God with goddess in her words, and I don't think that Alanya would mind that I did that. So very early on in her book, this is in phase 1, it's right at the beginning where she talks about honoring the divine. And this is an excellent topic. What does it mean to believe in Goddess? I could stop right there, right? I'm not going to, but I could stop right there. What does it mean? What does it mean to believe? What does it mean to believe in Goddess? It means learning to honor your own inherent godliness, goddessliness. This is not an easy task, but it is worth every ounce of effort you expend. Even though I now know what it means to believe and accept the presence of the divine as an inherent part of my being, there are times when I slip back into my old fears, old beliefs, and old confusion. I admit there are moments when I focus on the problem and not on the presence of goodness that is Goddess. Today, however, I know how to get still and ask the question and listen for the answer, because I always try to remember right now where I am, Goddess is, and Goddess believes in me. It is in these moments when the intellectual mind becomes still that the spirit will unfold and soar. It is when you can make these quiet pronouncements with belief that the presence of the divine is activated, infusing your being with a sense of peaceful well-being. I have learned that there is no magic formula that will bring you to that moment, nor is there one particular way to get there. There is, however, one requirement that seems to be true for everyone. You must have a deep desire to know the divine that is not based on anything other than the deep desire. You cannot want it for any other reason than to want it. It is just that simple. So let's go back to the first initial question, which is, what does it mean to believe? And I think what she means by that, or what I take from that, is what does it mean to believe means what does it mean to have faith? What does it mean to believe that? Because when she talks about slipping back into those old fears and old beliefs, what does it mean to believe that when I pray, that something is listening and will act on my behalf? Right? Because there was a time in my life, surely, that I didn't believe that. Or there are times in times of distress when we believe that, right? That nothing and no one is listening. That's why we call that a crisis of faith or an existential crisis. I have had my moments of crisis of faith. So I think that's part of it. What it means to believe is to believe that my prayers are not only heard, but that my requests are answered. Now, that doesn't mean that I can pray for a pile of money and a pile of money is going to show up on my doorstep. But it means that if I pray to my goddess about my financial fears, she will either help to relieve the fear and what is beneath the fear, right? Because the fear comes from some kind of wounding, right? The fear, because whenever there's a fear, right? I always have to find like the cause or condition that's underneath that fear, because there's always something beneath fear. Fears don't just come from nowhere. So that's one of the things that I have to believe. What does it mean to believe? It means I believe that when I have a fear, I can pray to my goddess about said fear. Dear goddess, I'm afraid that I don't have enough money, that there will never be enough money. And one of the ways that, and trusting that she will answer that prayer, and one of the ways that she can answer that prayer is to remove the fear or bring the what's underneath that fear into my consciousness so that I can look at it, journal about it, talk about it in therapy, whatever, heal whatever that wound is. So for me, what's underneath the fear about money is a fractured core belief that was instilled in me in my upbringing and family of origin, that money equals the financial security, right? Equals security, right? That if you don't have money, you should be afraid because you won't be okay. Like things won't be okay if you don't have enough money. You have to have enough money or things aren't going to be okay. That's the fear, that if I don't have enough money, right? And then there's that, right? Then enough becomes this arbitrary amount of money, that I'm not okay, or that I'm not good enough, right? Because there's always that good enough thing that's underneath everything. And she can show that to me and say, you still have this old fractured core belief that was instilled in you. And, maybe it's time to get rid of that or to give up that ghost or whatever. Or the other way that she can answer that prayer about financial insecurity is to show me a path to the money that I need, right? Like if I'm worried about money because I'm going to lose my job, she will show me the path to another job. Or if I'm worried about money because I have a job but I don't make enough money, she'll show me the path how to ask for a raise or a review. You know what I mean? Like the answer is always going to come. So what does it mean to believe in my goddess? It means I believe that when I pray, one, something is listening, and two, my prayer will be answered. I think the other thing that is striking about this passage is in the end, when she talks about the one requirement is to have a deep desire to know the divine that is not based on anything other than that deep desire that to know the divine, you have to really, 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 really want to know the divine. So I was trying to think of circumstances in which that is not the case. And I guess that's when you're forced to go to a church or follow a particular religion because of your family or your spouse, or like you have to, right? You have to want to know the divine, to have a relationship with the divine. I don't know that I agree with that 100%. I mean, in this context, yes, I do agree with that. You cannot want it for any other reason than you want it. But I think you do have a relationship with the divine. You could have a relationship with the divine that you are just completely unaware of. As I often say, the goddess loves you, whether you know it or not. And when she talks about slipping back in and focusing on the problem and not the presence of the goddess, she knows how to get still, ask the question, and listen for the answer. Do you know how to get still? I mean, we've talked about that on this in this forum before, on Priestess at the Altar before. How do we get still? I mean, you have to stop, right? But it's hard to get there from there. I imagine this giant stop sign in my head. Boys in the Hood is one of my favorite movies, and there's that like opening scene where the camera pans and then zooms in on the stop sign. That's what I picture in my head if I'm spinning out about something. So first you have to stop. First you have to stop. If you're in the middle of something frustrating, you've got to walk away from whatever that is. Stop. Yeah. I mean, that's just the first step to getting still, is you have to stop. And then you have to stop. First, you have to stop your body in motion. Then you have to stop the thoughts. And then you have to get quiet. I found the best way I can do that is to focus on a repetitive noise, like the hum of an air conditioner or whatever. There's usually some sort of mechanical noise in the room, whether it's AC or, some central cooling unit. If you're, you work with a bunch of computers, there's a fan in the computer. There's some there's some electrical noise in a room usually. Or, I focus on, like now I'm in this room and the window is open and I can hear the birds outside and I can hear, the distant hum of a lawnmower or whatever, just some noise that I can focus on that is not the chatter in my head about whatever I'm all up in arms about. So I'm going to read a little more. What does it mean to believe in the goddess and embrace the divine presence? It means you will still stumble at times, forgetting what you want, falling headfirst into the old habits and beliefs. Fear not, for that is to be expected. Whenever you challenge the old ways with new ways, the old ways will fight you tooth and nail. Always remember to be patient and loving with yourself and others, because that is what Goddess does all the time. The Goddess is not the voice of your self-critic. The voice of your self-critic is your voice, or maybe it's your mother's voice or your father's voice. I don't know, but it isn't her voice. So that bears repeating. I'm going to say that again. Always remember to be patient and loving with yourself and others, because that is what Goddess does all the time. There will be moments when fear will overtake you, cut your breath off, and make your head spin. The fear of losing control, of being weird, of giving up the familiar and comfortable for what is surely to be unfamiliar and uncomfortable. A mentor once told me, when you are comfortable, you are not growing. If you want to grow into a divine space in life, you must breathe and keep moving forward. Embracing the divine presence. What does that mean to you? How do you embrace the divine presence? What do I want to say about that? I like this part where it says, the fear of losing control, of being weird, of giving up the familiar and comfortable for what is surely to be unfamiliar and uncomfortable. My friends, it was not comfortable for me to step into this role. I resisted the role of priestess for a long time. So I resisted embracing that divinity within myself. I have no problem embracing her divinity. I love her. I worship her. I believe in her, right? But seeing those things to myself, which I talk about, right? Which I preach to others, the goddess is both without and within. She exists in me. There is a divine spark in me because I am of her. So why such a hard time embracing the role of priestess, preacher, deliverer of the good word of the goddess? I'm asking you so that you can leave comments, because I don't actually have an answer other than there's that fear, right? That fear. It's always fear. Our lives are shot so through with fear, and it prevents us from growth. It prevents us from growth. It prevents us from personal growth, but it also prevents us from spiritual growth, I think. Fear prevents us from spiritual growth. So what does it mean to believe? It means I outgrow fear and become willing, because my desire to know her is greater than my fear of the unknown and the uncomfortable. I just figured that out with you guys just right here and right now. So she goes on to say, rest assured there will be times when you fall flat on your face. Okay, that's a fear, because that's not happened yet. It will seem as if the harder you pray, the more you attempt to trust, the more holy and devout you become, the worse your life will appear to be. Things that were going well will go wrong. Things that were not going so well will blow up in your face. It is a trick. Do not be fooled by appearances. Hold on to the words, the phrases, the prayer, the little bits of trust and faith you can muster. You are not being tested. You are being fortified. Remember that you cannot fail. All paths lead to the same road, the road to peace, the road to joy, and the memory of the goddess's unconditional love. I mean, I like that she's saying we're not being tested. It's one of my pet peeves. I hate it when people say they're being tested. Why would a loving goddess ever just fuck with me like that? Right? Like, I'm gonna test you. No, that's just life being life. And like she said, it's fortifying me, right? Life happens. And if I can remember my divinity, and if I can remember that really it's about the spiritual journey, and no matter how impactful at the end of the day, what happens out here really isn't that big of a deal compared to what's happening like in here and like up here. I have to remain focused there to know that I can overcome anything because I'm connected up with this goddess that is the creatrix, progenitor of fucking everything. And she's got my back, and no matter what, it's all going to be all right. That's what it means to me to believe. Right? I'm going to keep going back to that initial question. What does it mean to believe? That's what it means to believe. Trust is what it means to believe. Trust that even when I'm being fortified and things go wrong and I fall flat on my face, that it's going to be all right. It's always going to be all right because it's never not been all right, right? I have a 51-year track record to look back on that tells me that it's always all right. Might not be exactly the picture of what I want it to be, but it's all right, right? All right, well, one more paragraph, and then I think I'm going to wrap it up. When you ask, would you want to take the journey? That's a question for you to ponder today, my friends. Would you want to take this journey? You must want to take it because you're here. Because you're here. You must want to know her, where you would not come to Sunday morning, priestess at the altar. Why, you ask, would you want to take this journey? Why would you look for goddess when you are doing just fine? You're making it on what you know, what you have learned. Why would goddess help you now? And what's in it for you? I have asked those questions of myself many, many times. I have found many answers. Some of the answers emerged from the old school, the old belief system that kept me in fear and confusion. If I didn't go to goddess, she would someday come to get me. There were many times I tried desperately to convince myself to believe goddess is good, goddess is best. Even with this in my arsenal, when things did not go the way I thought they should go, I became angry and frightened. The one answer to all of my questions that has stuck with me the longest and made the greatest impression has been, goddess is as dependent on me as I am on her. The creator of the universe, the divine energy of life, needs me to demonstrate the goodness she has in store for all people. I am the light of the world, and God wants me to shine in the glory of this knowledge. Goddess believes I can do it. When it was put to me this way, I figured I had very little to lose and everything in the world to gain. With a little faith, trust, and effort, I know you will discover that the same is true for you. So if the goddess is the light of the world, and I believe she is, and we, as devout, faithful followers of her, and we are in her, and she is in us, it is our job to be an example of that in the world. And when we are at our best and people notice, what they're seeing is an example of the goddess's love. That's our job, to be an example of her love and her light in the world. So I think that's what it's asking. Is that the journey you want to take? You want to take the journey to get to know her? Sure. You want to take the journey to be an example of her in the world? Well, that's a very different question, right? It's a very different question. But what that looks like, I think, is different for everybody. You can, take on a role or be some sort of avatar, which is what I decided to do. I didn't really decide. I mean, that's the truth of it. I spent a lot of time in prayer and meditation and had a lot of kind of weird, mystical, supernatural, just strange experiences, kind of sort of visions. I just call them that because I don't know what else to call them. That told me to do this, priestess at the altar. Same thing that told me to do that, to start the nonprofit Church of the Goddess. Or, you could just be Joe the computer programmer, just trying to be nicer to people. You know what I mean? There are all these varying levels of how do I be the goddess in the world. So I don't think that she makes too hard of terms for us, for those of us who honestly and earnestly seek her, who seek her with a little bit of humility, right? I think the humility comes from saying, you know what, I don't really know. I don't know. I don't claim to understand things like cosmogenesis and, the scientific history of the Big Bang Theory or anything like that. You know what I mean? What I know, or what I believe, is that she created everything, that she is in everything, that she is in me and I am in her, and I believe in her, and she believes in me. She believes that I can walk around and be an example of her love in the world. And I think that's what she wants me to do. So, back to the initial question. What does it mean to believe in Goddess? It means learning to honor your own inherent goddessliness. So I think that's how she tied it back together, right? If I honor my own inherent goddessliness, I embrace that I'm answering a calling to do this, to preach, to spread the word, to start a nonprofit, to even to do the podcast, the Girlfriend God podcast, which, when I started it, I had no idea what it was going to become. All I had was the name of the podcast, which was very personal to me, and its tagline, which was in search of and in service to the divine feminine. Because as I've said on this show before, everything I do, I do for her. Which I also kind of do for me. I mean, I know you understand that. So when you sign off today, give this some thought. What does it mean to you to believe? When you have moments of doubt, how do you get quiet so that you can get back to the space where you do believe? Are you willing to take the journey to know the divine more? Are you willing to acknowledge the inherent goddessliness in yourself? And are you willing to take the journey of being an example of her love and her power in the world? That is a lot to think about for a Sunday morning. So why don't you just take the whole week to think about those things? Okay, so please engage and leave comments. Leave comments below about this episode and I will answer them. Yeah, I think that is it for today. So until next week, may the peace and the love of the goddess be with you.
The girlfriend.